The night shift at the Deep Space Listening Array in New Mexico was usually quiet. Most nights, Alan Wright just watched the screens, drank coffee, and fought to stay awake. Tonight was different. Alan sat up straight in his chair when he noticed the strange pattern on his monitor. The signal repeated with perfect timing, too regular to be natural space noise. His heart beat faster as he ran the standard checks. "This can't be right," he mumbled, rubbing his tired eyes. He called his friend Bill at the next monitoring station. "Are you seeing this? Check frequency band 422.7. After a long pause, Bill's voice came through, tense with excitement. "I see it. What do you think it is?" "I don't know, but it's not one of ours." Alan's fingers flew across the keyboard, running the signal through every known pattern recognition system. Nothing matched. It wasn't from any satellite, space station, or probe that humans had ever launched. By morning, Alan had called his boss, Dr. Olivia Martinez. She arrived with dark circles under her eyes, clearly having rushed to the facility without sleeping. "Show me everything," she said, not bothering with a greeting. Alan pointed to his screens. It started at 2:17 a.m. The pattern repeats exactly every 42 seconds. "It's artificial, Dr. Martinez. I'm sure of it." Olivia leaned closer to the screen, her face lit by the blue glow of the monitor. "We need more eyes on this, and we need to keep it quiet until we know what we're dealing with." Within 24 hours, the small monitoring station transformed into a buzzing center of activity. NASA sent their top people, including Dr. Frank Turner, a physicist known for his work on quantum communications, and Lisa Garcia, the best xenolinguistics expert in the country. "The signal isn't random," Lisa said on the third day, pointing to a series of repeating segments. "There's a mathematical pattern here. It's language, or at least intended to communicate something." Frank nodded, his eyes never leaving the data stream. "But did you notice the trajectory analysis? This signal wasn't aimed at Earth." The room went quiet. "What do you mean?" Olivia asked. "It's passing through our solar system," Frank explained, bringing up a 3D model on the main screen. "If you trace it backward, it comes from this star system here. And if you follow it forward," he dragged his finger across the screen to show the signal's path, "it's headed somewhere else entirely. We just happen to be in the way." Alan felt a chill run down his spine. "So whoever sent this wasn't trying to talk to us?" "No," Lisa said quietly. "We're just overhearing someone else's conversation." For the next week, the team worked around the clock. They moved their operation to a special facility in the Colorado mountains, away from the electronic noise of cities. Here, with better equipment and more processing power, they made their breakthrough. Samantha Powell, a mathematician recruited from MIT, developed an algorithm that began to make sense of the signal structure. "It's a distress call," she announced one morning, her voice shaking slightly. "We can't translate the specific words yet, but the mathematical structure matches emergency communication patterns." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "There's someone out there," Alan whispered, "and they're asking for help." Frank looked up from his calculations, his face grave. "Based on the signal's age, whatever emergency it were facing happened 12 years ago. We're hearing their past." "Do we answer?" Lisa asked, looking around the room. Olivia stood up, her decision already made. "If they're still out there, they've been waiting for 12 years for someone to answer. I'm not going to make them wait any longer." And with that simple decision, humanity took its first step toward the stars, not as explorers, but as rescuers. The mountain research facility buzzed with new energy after Dr. Martinez decided to answer the signal. The team worked day and night, setting up powerful transmitters pointed toward the same path as the original message. "We need to understand more of their language before we try to speak to them," Samantha Powell said, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Her desk was covered with notebooks filled with complex equations. Alan brought her a cup of coffee. "Any progress?" Samantha nodded slowly. I think they use a number system based on 8 instead of 10. Once I figured that out, some patterns started making sense. In the next room, Lisa Garcia worked with supercomputers to match the alien patterns with known language structures. After 2 weeks of non-stop work, she called everyone for a meeting. "I have news," she said, her voice shaking with excitement. "We can understand parts of the message now." The room went silent as she played an audio translation created by the computer. The voice was flat and robotic, but the words were clear. Destruction unavoidable. Seeking assistance from Centauri Alliance. Coordinates follow. Generation ships launched. 8,000 children aboard. Fuel reserves critical. They call themselves the Valyrians, Lisa explained. Their star began to expand rapidly. They knew for years it would happen, but it accelerated faster than they expected. Frank Turner studied the star charts on his tablet. The coordinates they mention here match a system about 40 light-years from Earth. Presumably, that's where these Centauri allies are located. But they never got an answer, Alan said quietly. Did they? Dr. Martinez shook her head. We don't know. But given the desperation in this message, I think we have to assume the worst. Samantha looked up from her calculations. Based on the signal's age and the information about their ships, any survivors would be on Generation ships right now, trying to reach somewhere safe. Generation ships? Alan asked. Huge ships designed for long journeys across space, Frank explained. Multiple generations of people would live and die on board before reaching their destination. Dr. Martinez called Washington again that evening. She had been reporting their findings to government officials, but the response had been cautious. No one wanted to commit resources to what might be a misunderstanding or even a hoax. They're still not listening, she told the team after hanging up. They want more proof. Frank slammed his hand on the table. What more proof do they need? We've decoded enough to know this is real. There are people out there who need help. That night, Frank made a decision that would change everything. He secretly sent copies of their findings to major news organizations and scientific journals worldwide. By morning, the story was everywhere. Alien distress KL intercepted, read headlines across the globe. The facility's phones rang nonstop. Dr. Martinez was furious at first. Do you realize what you've done? We could all lose our jobs. But as public interest exploded, the government's position changed. The president scheduled a press conference. The United Nations called an emergency session. Sometimes you need to force people's hands, Frank told Alan as they watched the news. Now they have to take this seriously. Samantha rushed into the room, waving a printout. I've decoded more of the message. The Valyrians launched 5 ships, each carrying about 10,000 people. They had supplies for 50 years of travel. And how long ago was that? Alan asked. Based on the signal's age. Her voice trailed off. 12 years. They'd been traveling for 12 years already. Lisa joined them, her face pale. We need to find them. If they're still out there, they'll be running out of supplies. And they have no idea where they're going. The team looked at each other, the weight of responsibility heavy on their shoulders. Somewhere in the darkness of space, thousands of aliens were drifting on ships never meant to reach Earth, but Earth was now their only hope. The news about the Valyrian distress call spread like wildfire across Earth. In homes, schools, offices, and street corners, people talked about little else. Should humans try to help an alien species they had never met? Was it even possible? The United Nations called a special meeting in New York. Representatives from every country gathered to discuss what many called the most important decision in human history. This is not our problem, said the Russian ambassador. These aliens were not calling us. We should focus on Earth's problems first. Many agreed with him. Others argued that helping the Valyrians was too dangerous. What if they carried diseases? What if they were violent? As the debate continued, Navy Commander Eric Phillips was invited to speak. He was not a politician or scientist, but a decorated officer known for rescue missions. Eric stood before the assembly, his uniform crisp, his voice steady. "When I was a young sailor," he began, "my ship received a distress call during a storm. The signal was weak and broken. We couldn't tell who was calling or exactly where they were, but we knew someone needed help." The room grew quiet as Eric continued. "We spent 18 hours searching in that storm. We found a small fishing boat with 3 people clinging to life. They weren't Americans. They didn't speak our language, but they were people who needed help, and we helped them." He paused, looking around the room. "The Valyrians aren't human. They may not look like us or think like us, but they are living beings asking for help. If we ignore them because helping is hard or scary, what does that say about us?" His words touched something deep in many people. In the days that followed, public opinion shifted. Polls showed 62% of Earth's population now supported helping the Valyrians. Meanwhile, at NASA headquarters, engineer Diane Foster worked on a daring plan. She had been studying the experimental spaceship Horizon, originally designed for Mars missions. With modifications, she explained to her team, "We could send Horizon to intercept the Valyrian fleet. It would take about 30 years using a gravity assist from Jupiter and Saturn." 30 years, someone asked. "That's too long." "Not with suspended animation," Diane replied. "We have the technology to put a crew to sleep for most of the journey." News of Diane's plan reached the research facility in Colorado. Samantha was immediately interested. "If we can find the Valyrian fleet," she said, "we could save them. We could guide them to a habitable system." Not everyone was convinced. Religious leaders debated whether aliens had souls. Military officials worried about security risks. Ordinary people wondered if helping aliens meant less help for humans in need. Alan Wright, who had first discovered the signal, was invited to speak on television. "I understand the fear," he said to millions of viewers. "But think about this. The Valyrians lost their home. They sent a call for help into the darkness of space, not knowing if anyone would answer. What if that was us? Wouldn't we hope someone would answer?" In universities, scientists calculated what resources the aliens might need. In hospitals, doctors speculated about Valyrian biology. In homes, children drew pictures of what they imagined aliens looked like. Dr. Martinez watched all this with growing hope. "I never expected this response," she told her team. "People are actually coming together." Frank nodded. "Humans argue about everything. But most of us agree on one thing. When someone is in trouble, you help if you can." After weeks of heated debate, the UN Security Council prepared to vote on what was now called Project Lifeline. The entire world watched and waited to see if humanity would reach for the stars, not to conquer, but to rescue. The United Nations chamber erupted in applause when the final vote was counted. Project Lifeline was approved by a narrow margin. Humanity had decided to answer the call that was never meant for them. Within days, the world's space agencies formed a joint command. The mission would require the best minds and resources from every nation. Money poured in from governments and private donors alike. At the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, the Horizon spacecraft underwent massive changes. Originally built for Mars missions, it now needed to travel much farther and faster. Diane Foster led the engineering team, working 18-hour days. "We've added more fuel tanks," she explained during a tour for officials. "And these are the suspended animation chambers. The crew will sleep for most of the journey to save oxygen and food." The selection process for the crew was the most competitive in history. Thousands of qualified people volunteered, knowing they might never return to Earth. Captain Kyle Bennett was chosen to command the mission. At 42, he had already led 3 space missions and was known for his calm under pressure. When reporters asked why he volunteered, he gave a simple answer. "Someone has to go," he said, "and I'd rather it be me than ask someone else to make this sacrifice." The final crew included 12 members: pilots, engineers, a doctor, a biologist, a linguist, and other specialists. Nancy Palmer, A xenobiologist who had studied theoretical alien life forms joined as science officer. Communications expert Ryan Davis was selected for his gift with languages and patterns. Engineer Carol Harrison was chosen for her ability to fix almost anything with limited resources. As launch day approached, the crew recorded messages for their families. Kyle sat before the camera, struggling to find the right words for his teenage daughter. "Hey, Lily," he began. "By the time you see this, I'll be on my way. I know it's hard to understand why I have to go. The truth is, I'm scared too. But sometimes we have to do scary things because they're the right things to do." He paused, fighting back tears. "I want you to know that no matter how far away I am, I'm still your dad. When you look at the stars, pick one, and think of me there, thinking of you." His message was later played at schools across the world, becoming a symbol of the mission's human cost. The night before launch, the crew gathered for a final meal on Earth. They came from different countries, backgrounds, and beliefs, but they were now united by a common purpose. To the Valyrians, Kyle said, raising his glass in toast, "May we find them in time." And to Earth, Nancy added, "May we make her proud." Launch day dawned clear and bright. Millions watched in person and billions more on screens as the countdown began. The Horizon stood tall on the launch pad, larger and more powerful than any spacecraft before it. Dr. Martinez and her original team were given front row seats at the viewing area. Alan Wright stared at the rocket, thinking about how different his life had become since that quiet night shift when he first noticed the signal. 10, 9, 8. The crowd joined the countdown. Samantha squeezed Alan's hand. "Do you think we'll succeed?" "I don't know," he answered honestly. "But we have to try." 3, 2, 1. The engines ignited, and the Horizon lifted slowly at first, then with increasing speed. The roar was deafening, the sight breathtaking. As the spacecraft climbed higher, breaking free of Earth's gravity, cheers erupted across the planet. Project Lifeline had begun. Humanity had made its choice. Now, the crew of the Horizon carried the hopes of 2 species among the stars. The Horizon soared through space, leaving Earth behind. The first few weeks were busy as the crew checked systems and prepared for the long journey ahead. Soon, they would enter suspended animation, sleeping while the ship traveled toward its distant target. Final system check complete. Carol Harrison reported from her engineering station. "All green." Captain Kyle Bennett nodded. "Good work, everyone. Tomorrow we begin the long sleep." That night, the crew sent their last real-time messages to Earth. After this, communications would take hours, then days, then years to travel between the Horizon and home. One by one, they entered the suspended animation chambers. Dr. Nancy Palmer monitored each crew member as they fell into their deep sleep. Captain Bennett was last. "See you in 8 years," Nancy said as Kyle's chamber closed. The ship continued its journey in near silence, only the hum of machines filling the empty halls. Inside their chambers, the crew dreamed of Earth, of the mission ahead, and of the unknown aliens they hoped to save. 8 years passed as the Horizon slingshot around Jupiter, using the giant planet's gravity to gain speed. As planned, Captain Bennett and Navigation Officer Justin Miller woke up first. "Status report," Kyle asked, his voice rough from years of silence. Justin checked the computers. "We're on course." The Jupiter gravity assist worked perfectly. Their weeks awake were spent maintaining the ship, exercising to rebuild muscle, and sending messages back to Earth. Now those messages took hours to arrive. The 2 men talked often about home, about what might have changed in 8 years. "My daughter would be 23 now," Kyle said one evening. "Maybe finished college. Maybe married." Justin nodded. "It's strange to think life goes on without us there." After 6 weeks awake, they returned to their chambers, and 2 other crew members woke for their shift. This pattern continued for years. The ship flew past Saturn, gaining more speed from the ringed planet's gravity. Earth became a distant point of light among countless stars. 16 years into the mission, something unexpected happened during Justin's third awakening. He was checking long-range sensors when he noticed something odd. "Captain," he called to Kyle, who was exercising nearby. "You need to see this." The Valyrian fleet had changed course. Their trajectory was now angled slightly toward the horizon's path. "They've detected us," Kyle said, his heart racing. "They're adjusting to meet us." The news caused excitement when it reached Earth, though the message took nearly 2 days to arrive. Dr. Martinez, now in her 70s, cried when she heard. "They're still out there," she whispered. "They're waiting for us." Soon after, Earth's deep space listening arrays picked up new signals from the Valyrian fleet. These messages were different from the original distress call. They contained simple mathematical sequences, like someone teaching basic counting to a child. "They're trying to establish communication," Samantha Powell explained to reporters. "They're preparing for first contact." Back on the horizon, the crew began waking up more often to prepare. They studied the new Valyrian messages, working to understand more of their language and culture before meeting them. Kyle spent hours looking at the long-range scans of the Valyrian ships, 5 massive vessels traveling together, home to the last survivors of a dead world. "We're coming," he said to the distant specks of light. "Just hold on a little longer." 25 years had passed since the Horizon left Earth. The human crew had aged only 3 years in suspended animation. Everyone they knew back home was 25 years older. Some had died. Children had grown up. The world had changed. But the mission continued. 2 vastly different species from distant stars were drawing closer, both gambling everything on a meeting that was never supposed to happen. 27 years after leaving Earth, the Horizon approached the Valyrian fleet. All 12 crew members were now awake, their suspended animation chambers empty for the first time since the journey began. "Visual contact in 30 seconds, Justin announced, his voice tight with excitement. On the main screen, 5 massive ships appeared, moving slowly through the darkness of space. Each was shaped like a long cylinder with rings around the middle. Soft blue lights dotted their hulls. "They're beautiful," Carol whispered. Captain Bennett turned to Communications Officer Ryan Davis. "Send the greeting message we prepared." Ryan nodded and sent the carefully designed transmission, a series of mathematical sequences followed by simple images representing peace and friendship. The response came surprisingly quickly. The largest Valyrian ship transmitted back, adding new patterns to the ones humans had sent. "They're responding to our exact frequency," Ryan said. "They've been waiting for us." For 3 days, the ships moved closer while the 2 species exchanged increasingly complex messages. Dr. Nancy Palmer worked with Ryan to build a basic translation system. "I think I understand their main greeting now," Nancy said on the 4th day. "They keep sending a phrase that roughly means unexpected helpers or surprise rescuers." "Makes sense," Kyle replied. "They sent a distress call to their allies, but we showed up instead." Finally, the Horizon reached the Valyrian fleet. Up close, the alien ships were enormous, each one at least a mile long. "They're inviting 2 of us to board their command ship," Ryan announced after receiving the new message. "They've explained their atmosphere. Nancy confirms it's breathable for humans with minimal protection." Captain Bennett stood up. "I'll go. And Ryan, you're our best communicator. You're coming with me." The crew gathered in the shuttle bay as Kyle and Ryan prepared to depart. They wore special suits designed to protect them from any unknown hazards while still allowing movement and comfort. "Be careful out there," Carol said, adjusting Ryan's suit one last time. "We've come too far to mess it up now," Kyle replied with a smile that didn't quite hide his nervousness. A shuttle journey to the Valyrian command ship took 20 minutes. As they approached, a large door opened on the side of the massive vessel. "Here we go," Kyle said as their shuttle landed inside the alien ship, humanity's first meeting with another intelligent species. They stepped out of the shuttle into a large, dimly lit chamber. 3 tall figures waited for them. The Valyrians stood on 4 legs, with 2 arms tucked against their chests. Their bodies were covered in what looked like iridescent scales that shifted color in the light. Their heads were elongated with large, compound eyes that reflected the room around them. Ryan activated his translation device. "I bring greetings from Earth," he said carefully. The lead Valyrian stepped forward. Its upper body swayed gently as it replied in a musical, clicking language that the translation device processed. "We thank the unexpected rescuers," the device translated. "We had given up hope of being found." The Valyrian's name was Zelfar, the fleet coordinator. Through careful translation, Kyle and Ryan learned the tragic story of the Valyrians. Their sun had begun expanding much faster than predicted. They had sent distress calls to their trading partners, the Zenturi, but never received an answer. Later, they discovered the Zenturi had been devastated by a civil war and couldn't respond. "We launched with supplies for 50 years, Zelfar explained. "But we have no destination. Our scanners found no suitable planets within reach." Kyle nodded solemnly. "That's why we're here. Earth wants to help you find a new home." Zelfar's scales rippled with blue light, an emotional response the humans didn't yet understand. "Why would your people help strangers they never met?" the Valyrian asked. Ryan smiled. "Because that's what humans do. When we hear a call for help, we answer, even if it wasn't meant for us." The news of successful first contact spread across Earth like wildfire. For decades, the world had waited, hoping the mission would succeed. Now, humanity celebrated as images of the Valyrians reached home. Captain Bennett and his crew spent weeks aboard the Valyrian command ship, learning about their new allies. The Valyrians shared their knowledge, history, and technology freely. "Their science is different from ours," Nancy explained during a transmission to Earth. "They focused on biology and materials where we focused on physics and computing. Together, we can do amazing things." On Earth, governments worked together on an unprecedented plan. Mars, which scientists had been slowly terraforming for years, would become a temporary home for the Valyrians while a permanent solution was developed. "The Valyrian biology is adaptable," Dr. Martins told world leaders in her final presentation before retirement. "With some modifications to the Mars environment, they can survive there until we find them a better home." 2 months after first contact, 3 Valyrian representatives boarded the Horizon for the journey back to Earth. Zelfar led the delegation. The return would be faster, using advanced Valyrian engine technology, combined with human navigation systems. The night before departure, Kyle found Zelfar looking at the stars through a viewing port. "Are you nervous about going to Earth?" Kyle asked. Zelfar's scales rippled with a mix of colors. "Yes. We lost one home already. It is difficult to believe we found another." "Not just a home," Kyle said. "Allies. Friends." When the Horizon returned to Earth 5 years later, millions gathered to welcome them. The sight of humans and Valyrians standing together on the landing platform moved many to tears. "Today marks a new chapter in human history," the Secretary General announced. "And in Valyrian history, too. 2 species who never knew about each other now share a future." The following years brought incredible advances. Valyrian biological knowledge helped cure several human diseases. Human computer technology helped the Valyrians map potential star systems for a permanent colony. 10 years after first contact, the first Valyrian children were born on Mars. They grew up learning both Valyrian and human languages, part of a new generation that bridged 2 worlds. 50 years after the Horizon's original launch, an aging Kyle Bennett stood on a platform in front of the renamed Horizon space station. His daughter Lily, now in her 70s, stood beside him. "This memorial honors those who made first contact possible," Kyle said to the gathered crowd of humans and Valyrians. "But it also reminds us of something important." He unveiled a simple plaque with words in both human and Valyrian languages. "To the stars that guide us, the voices that called, and the courage to answer." The ceremony was broadcast across Earth and Mars, and to the combined human-Valyrian science fleet, now exploring a distant solar system where both species might one day live together. Later that evening, Kyle stood with Zelfar, both of them much older but still friends after all these years. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" Kyle asked. "When your people sent that signal into space?" "Never," Zelfar replied. "We were calling for help, not knowing if anyone would answer. We certainly never imagined an alien species would come to our rescue." Kyle smiled. "The signal wasn't for us. But maybe the universe knew exactly what it was doing." On a newly terraformed section of Mars, human and Valyrian children played together under the pink sky. They pointed to the stars and made up stories about what they might find out there. And somewhere in the vastness of space, other signals traveled between stars, waiting for someone brave enough to answer.